Hey y'all, it's your friend D, and in today's video, we're getting started on the post office by making the furniture. We're going to start with the main desk, and this is where the post office workers will greet customers and help them with different services. And I'm using the exact measurements that I used for the diner counter, just to make things a little easier. For all of the furniture, I'm using foam board and a little bit of paperboard. For the desk front panel, I'm using a piece of foam board that is 7 inches by 5 3/4 inches. And I did make a note along the bottom. This is one of the 7-inch sides. And I wanted to make sure I noted that that is going to be the bottom. For the side panels, I need 2 pieces of foam board, and they are both cut to 5 3/4 inches by 2.5 inches. For the base of the desk, I have a piece of foam board that is cut to 6.5 inches by 1 1/4 inches. And if you want some extra shelves for your desk, I would cut out a few more of these pieces. For the top of the desk, I have 1 piece of foam board and 1 piece of paperboard, and they are both cut to 7 1/4 inches by 2 3/4 inches. I also have a few strips of paperboard that are cut to 1/4 inch wide. To assemble the desk, we're going to take the front panel and one of the side panels, and the side panel is going to go along the side here and sit on top of the front panel. So I have the side glued to the front, and I'm just using hot glue for now to get the pieces together. Now I can take my base and glue it in like this. So it's going to be in this corner, and make sure that everything is flush at the edges. I have the base on, and if you wanted to add extra shelving, this is when you would do it. You can cut out some extra pieces the same dimension as the base and insert them inside here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use this area to store some larger items, so I'm going to go ahead and put on the other side panel. So the other side panel just sits here on top of the front, and we'll glue it in place. So this is what the desk is looking like from the front, and if you've seen the diner video, you know I covered the counter in a vinyl from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to do the same thing to this desk. I'm using this Crafter Squares vinyl from the Dollar Tree. It is permanent, and this is the color dark blue. So I have the vinyl on the foam board, and I have to say it was a struggle getting this blue to stick. The pink that I used in the diner worked without any issues, but this dark blue, I'm not sure if it's just a bad batch or what, but I did have to add some glue to some places. So this is what it looks like on the bottom, and we won't see that, so I didn't need this to be too pretty, but I did add a little bit of glue on the edges here just to make sure it stays down. It looks like in the center here it's really smooth and it's finally sticking. And here's what the inside looks like. And this won't be seen when I'm filming, so I didn't feel the need to cover the entire thing. And just to make sure it stays down, I did add a small line of glue on all of these sides just to keep the glue vinyl in place. Now let's make the top of the desk. And to do this portion, I'm just going to take the paperboard and glue it on top of the foam board. And you can use the hot glue for this, but I'm going to use a little bit of Mod Podge. So I glued the top down with some Mod Podge, and now I can work on the edges. I'm going to use these 1/4 inch strips and go around the edge to cover that up and make it look a little bit neater. And you can use whatever glue you want to. I'll probably use some more of the Mod Podge for this. I have all of the edges covered in the paperboard, and this is the bottom. We won't see it once it's glued in place, so I'm not going to worry about it. And now I can cover this with some gesso. Once the gesso is dried, I'm going to paint it. And you don't have to use gesso, you can go straight into painting yours. And I'm going to use the color dark brown. My top is dry, and now I can just glue it in place. Here's the finished desk. We can move on to the second piece of furniture, which I'm just calling the rear desk. In my post office, I'm going to have 2 areas similar to what I have in the bank. And in the back of the post office, there's going to be a small desk. I'm using 1 piece of foam board and 1 piece of paperboard for the top of the desk, and both pieces are cut to 2.5 inches by 2 inches. I have 2 pieces of foam board for the side panels, and they are cut to 5 3/4 inches by 2 inches. I have 2 pieces of foam board that are cut to 2 inches by 1 inch, and one is going to be used as a front panel, and it's going to look like a faux drawer, and the other one is going to be a shelf. Before I start assembling all of these pieces, my plan was to cover it in the blue vinyl so it would match the main desk, but I'm not sure if that's going to work. So I'm going to try to cover it in the vinyl. If it doesn't work, I'll just come back and paint it all. But for now, I'm going to set aside the top pieces. I have my pieces covered in the vinyl, and I did have to use glue again, but I'm going to stick to my original design. On the little pieces, I covered the front completely and didn't too much worry about the back because that won't be seen. On the larger pieces, I did want it completely covered except for the top where I'm going to glue the desktop down. So that part didn't matter to me, but everything else, I wanted it to be neatly covered. To assemble this desk, I'm going to start with one large piece and one small piece. And I want the small piece to connect like this and be flush with the very top, but back about 1/4 of an inch from this front side. Oh, and really quickly, I'm going to be using hot glue to put everything together, and I know that hot glue will melt this vinyl, so I'm going to be very careful with how much I use. But if you don't want to risk melting the vinyl, just use some craft glue. I have my first 2 pieces glued together, and I used the smallest amount of hot glue that I could get away with. So this is what it's looking like. You can see there's about 1/4 of an inch of space here on the front, and it is flush with the top. Next, I'm going to take the other small piece and glue it here, and I'm just going to eyeball it. Now I can glue the other side panel on, and I'm making sure that edge that I left uncovered with the vinyl is at the top. I took one of the strips of paperboard and cut off a piece that is 1 inch long, and that's going to serve as my faux drawer handle. So I'll paint this silver and glue it in place, but I'm going to wait and paint it at the same time that I paint the desktop. I'm going to make this desktop the same way I made the previous one, glue the paperboard on top, and then go around the edges with these strips. My top is dry, so I'm going to glue it in place. Here's the finished small desk, and I did remember to add my little faux handle. And the small desk does fit inside the large one. The next piece of furniture is going to be a shipping box stand. If you've ever been in a post office, you know there's always that stand or a counter that has shelves on it, and you can pick up the priority shipping boxes. That's what this is going to be. So for the top, we need 1 piece of foam board and 1 piece of paperboard, and they are both cut to 5 inches by 2.5 inches. For the side panels, we need 2 pieces of foam board and 4 pieces of paperboard, all cut to 7 inches by 2 inches. For my cubby holes that are going to hold my boxes, I needed 4 pieces of foam board and 2 pieces of paperboard, and they are all cut to 4 inches by 1.5 inch. And I needed 2 for the front panels and 2 for the base. And I'm only going to cover the parts that are going to be seen with the paperboard, so that's why I only have 2 of these. To make the stand, I'm going to start by covering the side panels with the paperboard pieces. So they'll be glued together like this. I have the side panels covered, and I'm going to set these aside so the Mod Podge can dry. Now I'm going to take the front panels of my cubby holes and cover them with the paperboard. I have the 2 pieces that are the front of the cubby holes covered with the paperboard. No one's going to see the back, so I'm not worried about that. And you should have the 2 pieces for the base, and these are not going to be seen, so I'm not going to cover it with paperboard. While the Mod Podge is still drying on the other pieces, I'm going to go ahead and glue the paperboard to the top of my stand. So just like this. And then once all of these pieces are dry, I'm going to cover the edges with those strips. So I have all the parts that needed to be covered with the paperboard covered, and it's looking pretty good. And on the front panels, I didn't have to cover all of the sides because you're only going to see this top edge. And if you want to cover all of the sides, that's perfectly fine. But once I seal everything with the gesso, I'm not worried about this part getting damaged because the gesso will seal it. I just like the look on the outside of the paperboard. It just gives a little bit of a smoother finish when I paint it. To start assembling the stand, I'm going to take a side panel and one of the base pieces for the cubby holes. And I marked where I want that base to go on my side panel. So this first mark here is a 1/2 inch from the bottom and the second mark is 3.5 inches from the bottom. So I'm going to take my base piece and glue it onto that line, and I want it towards the back. So you see we have some space left here at the front. I'm just going to line it up like this and glue it in place. So I glued on the base, and I went ahead and glued the other one on also. It's just the same thing. And if you look at it from this angle, you can see it is flush with this back edge. That's going to just be the back of the stand. And I have this extra space left here, and I'm going to need that for the front panel. For the front panel, I'm going to take the edge that is not covered with the paperboard, the long edge, and line it up with the base as best I can. So kind of like this. And I'm going to tilt it out at an angle. And I want it to come to the edge. So I have one of the front panels glued in place, and this is what it looks like from the side. You can see it's slightly tilted forward, and it's lined up with this front edge. So I have my other front panel on, and now I can put the other side piece on. So I was just about to tell you guys that now we put on the top piece. Anybody notice anything? Why would I think I don't need a back? Just when I thought I've been doing pretty good this video. All of my measurements have been good. Yeah. All right, I'll be back. All right, so I decided to just cut out a back piece, 2 back pieces, and they're the same size as the front and the base of the cubby. And I'm just going to glue those in like this, and they'll just sit straight up. And I guess I was thinking because this is going to be against the wall, I didn't need a back. But at some point I might want to move it to a different area in the post office, so kind of need a back. So I have my back panels on, and I just realized I could have edited this to make it look like I didn't make a mistake, but come on, if you've watched my videos for any amount of time, you know I always make a mistake with measurements or something. So that would have been a little suspicious if I had a video without any mistakes. But now we're going to put the top on, and oh, that's the back. Turn it over. And I think I want it like that. And now I'm going to cover everything in gesso and paint this brown. Here's the finished stand, and I think it came out pretty good. So even with me forgetting to put a back on it, I think it looks good. So I can have it against the wall, or I can have it freestanding. Next, I'm going to make a mail sorting cabinet, and I'm going to use 18 foam pieces that are cut to 1.5 inch by 1/2 inch. And all of these are to separate the little cubbies that will hold the mail. I also have 4 pieces of foam board that are cut to 3.5 inches by 3/4 inch, and these are going to be my smaller shelves. For my larger shelves, I'm using 3 pieces of foam board that are cut to 3.5 inches by 1 3/4 inch. For the back wall of my sorting cabinet, I'm using 1 piece of foam board that is 12 inches by 3.5 inches. For my side panels, I need 2 pieces of foam board and 4 pieces of paperboard. I'm going to move around this piece clockwise and give you the measurements for all of the side panel pieces. So this top edge here would be 12 inches long. Here would be 1 inch. Along this side is 6 inches up until this corner, and then you have 1 inch, 6 inches, and then 2 inches. I was having some issues with my audio for this section, so I'm just going to do a voiceover. Right here, I'm showing you the side panels, and I'm going to cover those in the paperboard. And about this time is when I realized I cut my paperboard out wrong. I cut them all the same, and you need them to kind of be opposites of each other if you're going to sandwich the paperboard when it's cut to a specific shape. So right here, I'm showing you that if I put the paperboard on top of the foam board, 2 of the pieces would work for one side, and the other 2 that I cut, they won't work, because if I try to put it on the opposite side, I would need to use the side with the print facing up. And I don't know if the gesso would give me enough coverage, so when I paint over the gesso, you wouldn't be able to see the words. And I wasn't sure if I had any more paperboard in my stash because I was running through my larger pieces pretty quickly. But I think I show you that I did go and check, and I was able to find another piece of paperboard so I could cut out some fresh pieces. So here's where I found another piece of paperboard, and it was just enough to give me 2 more pieces for this project. So I cut out the new pieces, and I'm showing you that when you cut your pieces out, that to make sure if you're using paperboard that has a picture on one side, the pictures should be facing each other when you put them together. So like this, I used a pizza box, and so when you cut them out and you want something sandwiched in between and you only want the brown showing on the outsides, make sure those pictures are on the inside. So I have the paperboard glued onto the side panel foam board, and now I'm going to take that piece and glue it to the side of my back wall, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So it's not sitting on top of the wall, it's off to the side. And now I've glued it together. There's another picture of what that looks like. And I'm going to take one of my smaller shelves, and that's going to serve as a top for the cabinet as well as an additional shelf. And I'm just showing you where I'm going to glue that in. So that's now in, and I'm going to start gluing in the slots for my, kind of like the cubbies where you put the mail. I did draw on some lines that I could follow. Each line is a 1/2 inch apart, and I'm just going to glue these little pieces on top of that, and that'll just help me with my spacing. And I'm going to do 6 across. So the first 6 are glued on, and now I'm going to take another one of those smaller shelf pieces, glue it underneath, and then do another row of 6 of the smaller pieces. And I do that a 3rd time, and that completes all of the mail slot cubbies. And now I can take those larger shelf pieces and start putting those on the bottom half. So I'm showing you where the first one is going to go, right where that side panel widens. I'm going to put that first large shelf right at the edge. Now I'm trying to figure out where the next 2 are going to go. The second one is going to be the base of the cabinet, so it's going to be at the very bottom. And then the 3rd one, I decided to put it in the middle. So after gluing those shelves on, I can now glue on the other side panel. Now I'm going to cover all of those edges, including the fronts of the mail slots, with some paperboard strips. And I didn't use a lot of paperboard like on that back wall because you're not going to really see that once I put all the little clutter items in, so the gesso was enough. Here's the finished mail sorting cabinet or stand, and the small envelope mail will go up here, and down here I'm going to have some of those large bins. I'm not sure what they're called, but they have post office on the side. I'll put a picture on the screen of what I'm thinking about, but I still have to make those. But overall, I think the cabinet looks pretty good. In the next video, I'll be building the post office, putting all of the furniture inside, and some other items. So my friends, that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions about anything in this video, please leave it in the comments below, and I will try my best to answer your questions. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. I'll see you next time, my friends. Bye-bye.